SAUTI on Africa headline. Kwame Nkrumah, unwavering love for Africa and the construction of a Pan-African vision. Kwame Nkrumah, 1909–1972, was one of the most influential African leaders of the 20th century, driven by a deep love for Africa and the belief that the continent could only reach its full potential through unity, self-sufficiency, and cultural identity. From an early age, Nkrumah committed himself to liberating Africa from colonialism and neo-colonialism, believing that the continent's destiny lay in the hands of its people. Growing up in the British-ruled Gold Coast, Nkrumah witnessed colonial exploitation and developed a dream of a free Africa where its people could thrive without foreign control. He pursued education abroad in the United States and the UK, where he was influenced by Marxist, socialist, and nationalist ideas. He connected with African and Caribbean intellectuals like W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, shaping his vision of a united and independent Africa, free from colonial rule. Upon returning to the Gold Coast, Nkrumah quickly became a leader in the independence movement. In 1949, he founded the Convention People's Party, CPP, demanding independence now. His leadership led to the Gold Coast becoming Ghana, the first independent sub-Saharan African nation in 1957. In his independence speech, Nkrumah famously said, "The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked with the total liberation of the African continent." Ghana Independence Speech, 1957. For Nkrumah, freedom for one nation could not be fully realized while other African nations remained under colonial rule, reflecting his broader love for the entire continent. After Ghana's independence, Nkrumah turned his attention to the rest of Africa, believing that the liberation of each African country was connected to the continent's overall freedom. He became a leading advocate for African unity, calling for a unified political and economic bloc he referred to as the United States of Africa. In 1963, Nkrumah helped establish the Organization of African Unity, OAU. His declaration, "Africa must unite or perish," OAU speech 1963, expressed his belief that division would leave Africa vulnerable to foreign interference. Nkrumah also promoted economic cooperation, believing that a common African market would reduce dependence on foreign powers and strengthen the continent. Nkrumah understood that political independence would be incomplete without economic autonomy. He recognized neo-colonialism, the economic control exerted by foreign powers, as a new form of domination. In Neo-Colonialism, the last stage of imperialism, 1965, he warned, "Neo-colonialism is the worst form of imperialism. For those who practice it, it means power without responsibility, and for those who suffer from it, it means exploitation without redress." Nkrumah launched industrial projects in Ghana, including the Akosombo Dam, to promote economic growth. He also supported intra-African trade, seeing it as key to reducing external dependence and achieving long-term prosperity for the continent. Nkrumah also recognized the importance of cultural decolonization. He believed colonialism had left deep scars on African identities, imposing European values that devalued African culture. For Nkrumah, loving Africa meant embracing and celebrating its cultural heritage. In Consciencism, Philosophy and Ideology for Decolonization, 1964, Nkrumah called for a cultural revolution that would reconnect Africans with their history and traditions. He believed that only by valuing their own culture could Africans fully free themselves from the legacy of colonialism. He promoted African education and arts as tools for building a new post-colonial identity. In 1966, Nkrumah was overthrown in a coup supported by foreign powers while on a diplomatic mission. Exiled to Guinea, he continued advocating for Pan-Africanism until his death in 1972. Even in exile, Nkrumah's love for Africa never wavered. He kept pushing for African unity, believing that the fight for true independence was far from over. Kwame Nkrumah left behind a profound legacy of love for Africa, which continues to inspire leaders and movements across the continent. His vision of a united and independent Africa played a key role in the establishment of the African Union in 2002 and the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. Nkrumah believed Africa's future would be secured only if Africans worked together to control their destiny. His love for Africa was not just a sentiment, it was a lifelong commitment to the continent's political, economic, and cultural liberation. His vision remains a guiding light for Africa's journey towards self-sufficiency and emancipation. Nkrumah's message, "Africa must unite or perish," continues to resonate as a call to action for Africans to fight for unity, freedom, and prosperity.